Morning, Nirav.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Yep. Here, don't even have an agenda.
Hey, I don't have anything to present this week, so yeah, just wanted to let you know.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see who joins, because I was very full with meetings until now. Hello, Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Hello. So, Panos, you work for Meta?
Yes.
My daughter works for Meta.
Oh, really? You could ask her to ping me.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello,
Are you
John.
in the Bay, Jim? Oh, ready. What part?
No, I'm East Coast, Raleigh, Durham,
Oh, okay.
and she is as well.
Okay. Yeah, my wife used to live in New York for a while.
Mm-hmm. Actually, Christy started in New York, and then she moved back home to Raleigh, Durham.
Okay.
Okay, we're almost 3-4 minutes into. Should I start by asking if there is any item that somebody wants to bring into the agenda?
I don't know if it's already on the agenda, but I made a whole bunch of comments on the life cycle document that you might want to look at today.
Okay, we can put that in the agenda. And I think this should be our main topic anyway to discuss today about the document again. So, okay. And I think one more thing. So I would also be asking, how do you feel we should go about transferring or splitting part of what we discussed from the fleet lifecycle document, the lifecycle document, to a fleet management product proposal?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think what we said is, well, and John is here, so that's helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, I think what we said before was, we'll take the lifecycle management document. We identified areas to focus on. We'll bring those areas out into another document and kind of start working on those in parallel. So the idea is to, and Paros, you might cover this better than I do, but the idea is to kind of look at it from a fleet perspective, the areas, and then figure out the end-to-end use cases, flows, and requirements.
Also, I'm just filling the items at the moment. There seems to have been an issue that was discussed in the hardware health monitoring work group against some contention that has been between them and a different team. And I should bring it to our work group to see how we go about collaborating with any other affected or interested party without, let's say, offending their principles or their roles. And how do we explore the areas that we wish to not only to cover but just to visit by collaborating rather than competing with any other team within or outside of the OCP. And I will call out that a very good example is the DMTF task force that does such trivial work, such useful work in the area of fleet management that we need to respect and set our lines.
So this is John. So that's one of the reasons I've joined this meeting was, I've always been joining this meeting was because I also wear a DMTF hat. And my early changes to the early specifications was to not try to conflict with what the DMTF has. And so if you guys have suggestions and proposals, then that's fine. There's a submission portal for that to get into the DMTF. You should utilize that and be clear that if you're proposing DMTF models, that you put the word proposal all around it, right? Saying, hey, we're just having this discussion. We we will submit it into the DMTF as the proper way to do it. Now, in the particular case, I think that fault management dealt with, they were dealing with organizations whose documentation was not public. You have to be a member to even see it. And they were talking about it, and they were little snippets of it, that they were putting in maybe drafts or whatever, and that was verboten, right? So you have to respect what organizations you're with, other standard bodies you're with, and adhere to whatever the rules are.
Yeah, even more so, John. In the context of respecting each other's work, we should set a charter, or we should set a clear line of where the discussion is no longer in our field, and we should move it to the DMTF forum rather than us coming with a complete, let's say, or solution or something like, say, this is enough to be submitted, and carry the discussion over to the appropriate forum rather than us, let's say, lobbying for something and doing extensive work on something that would have been DMTF's area. I'm taking the DMTF as an example of how we.
No, I agree. The DMTF likes a bunch of engineers, right? They like problems. So to identify the gap, say we need something that looks like this, and then ship it over to them, and they'll take it as the problem that they need. Sometimes people actually say, yes, well, here's a problem. This is what we think a solution might look like, and they'll lob that over the fence. And so the DMTF knows, oh, he wants a solution that kind of looks like this. That's within. We can modify our specifications to look like that, or that's against our specifications, and so we're going to do it some other way. But you'll get what you want. You just won't get the way you want it. So,
and for transparency, I would say that I also am actively part of the DMTF right now. In fact, my management tells me that that's a higher priority than OCP. But I just recently started that, and so I'm sure I don't have as much experience at the liaison process as Jerry and some of the rest of you might.
Oh no, so we cannot hear you.
You're talking, but we can't hear you.
Wrong mute button. So just like I was saying, that's when we are able to wear more than one hat, to use them wisely and not create any contentions between teams. And that's for me a very strong ask, and we should have it in our charter or mode of operation, that we need to be very careful about any such situations. And also explicitly convey to to other affected bodies that we will be carrying out or intend to carry out some work, and ask for their permissions if needed.
So what is the decision on the orchestration? Are we including as part of the charter, or are we saying it's kind of open, or leave it?
No, it's it's part of the charter as a mode of operation. It's not the goal, but it's mode of operation that whenever there is other body, like we need to explicitly state that whenever there is other bodies that would be affected or have an overlap of interest with this work, we need to communicate with them and set any lines that need to be drawn between what we are doing in this work group and what needs to be discussed on their side.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Through representatives or any memberships or any leverage that we as engineers could have on their field. Right.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's constant battle depending on different bodies we are working together, but we need to be able to explicitly call it out.
Yeah, and I think our team could like potentially suffer more than others because we have quite a wide charter to cover these fields, and I see ourselves like in several directions to overlap or step into something that some other team may have been working on or has their charter to work on.
Yeah, especially because that's the thing, right? Especially because our charter is wide. I think the problem might be we may unintentionally step into it. So I think it may not be intentional, right? So we should use help from others to kind of vet what we are doing. And
I think we should call it out, right? I know OCP and other couple of other bodies, they established a formal relationship. If we really need to establish it, we need to bring it up to the OCP committee to make sure that that area is closed.
Yeah, and having representatives from these different forums, maybe this example was related to DMTF, but I think for us, we're gonna have to collaborate with different groups within OCP also. So we should probably try to see if we can have some representatives join us. And that will help us understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
That way we can step onto it.
Yeah, I brought the example of DMTF since John is here and Jim as well. So we have not representatives. We have two persons that I believe can convey some rules to us. Right? I'm not saying that they wear a representative hat here, right? Nor we wear a representative hat if we participate in their meetings, right? But I'm saying that being able to convey the rules of what the other team, like what the other charter is, and sometimes our companies make us implicit members of both organizations, and we should be able to respect the charter of both and not create any contentions.
No, that's great. Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
that's good. I mean, having that view of both.
Yeah, and I need to set it proactively so that we can avoid situations like this that's happened with fault management group, and be clear in the industry that we're trying to build a sane, a healthy ecosystem here of collaboration, rather than lobbies competing with each other. So if you don't mind, we could mark that as a discussed topic that we need to somehow mention it in our charter. Okay. Should we go on with the next item?
Yeah.
Sorry. Was it you, Nirav, you were saying before that I opened this conversation?
No, I think Jim wants to go over the comments that he may have.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's jump to them.
Jim, would you like me to present, or would you like to present?
If you want to drive, that would be great.
Okay, I don't mind. Let me pull it up. And usually I get an email anytime somebody comments, but I didn't see emails from you. So
right. So yeah, Nirav, that's one of the things I want to understand is the protocol of collaboratively working on the document. I tried to make my footprint known, but
yeah, no, that's good. It's just that I would have like looked at it, and I like, let's look at it together. That's fine. No, there's no protocol.
Okay.
It's a good thing that you documented what you put. Yeah, I think this diagram is we need to fix it. So I think the presentation has a better diagram, and this diagram is older. So I need to swap the. Yeah, I need to bring the diagram from the presentation that we did in OCP into here. So let me. I think you're right. So
I'm not seeing the text of the document on the screen.
Oh, you're not?
No, I see.
No, we see the drive.
I think you're not sharing.
I'm not.
We see the drive, not the document.
Oh, I'm sharing the wrong thing. Okay. Let me share again. Oh, that's right. Okay. I think the first comment that I noticed here. So let me start from the first page. So let's just walk through these. Yeah. So the first comment that needs one area that needs specific attention is live migration. Perfect. Where some computation and data is moved from one piece of hardware to another. The goal is to perform this migration is transparent to the user, with the exception of a small time duration of diminishing performance. Okay.
So let me just make a comment to the meeting. So I spent about a year and a half, 2 years at Broadcom working on a VirtIO feature for a product that was ultimately canceled. But I became very sensitive to cloud providers, hyperscaler providers. They wanted to switch their tenants back and forth seamlessly with just maybe a little blip in performance, when they wanted to do maintenance or where they wanted to do decommissioning of a machine. So and so I just became sensitized to the desire, and this is beyond VirtIO. This is just the desire to be able to move people around live when you have when an owner, a hyperscaler wants to work on their equipment.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So I definitely go ahead and add some text here about it. Does anyone know if this is something that OCP or DMTF in general is working on, like BKMs for how to do live migrations?
At least my understanding is live migration is a software construct on top of the hardware.
Right.
I have not seen a detail or any work groups addressing that.
Yeah, that would not be anything DMTF would be interested in.
I see. So
The only thing we would be interested is in the interface to do live migration, but DMTF doesn't care about implementation, so there hasn't been a definition of live migration yet at the interface level.
I see. And what about OCP? Is there since
there's no work that I know of within OCP.
So this is a new field.
Yeah, because OCP is really focused on hardware, right? Platforms that you can build products on that people can buy. Not a whole lot in software architectures. So this group and maybe security would be interested in software stuff.
I see. Is this something?
Yes.
Okay.
So if I may suggest that the software allocation of machines would be down to the hyperscaler and sometimes very proprietary to how we or anybody operates, right? What I would expect is that the hardware model has hooks that can tie into the software allocation scheduler or what technology we use. So being able to tie the two systems together to say that we need to signal our proprietary system that we will be doing migrations or we're doing maintenance or anything, I think that's the line where we need to communicate and leave it up to the other implementation there.
I agree.
Question is, I believe what John is was saying, right? In order for migration, do we need any hardware construct or firmware construct?
I believe we would. Right? Yeah, I believe we would, because how else would we?
What is that actually, right? If something
we
missing, we need to figure out and put it, right?
Yeah, usually migrations or large operations need some form of scheduling, some form of foresight or preparation that needs to be done. And as such, the hardware should be flagged or reserved or allocated somehow. So there has to be some interface back and forth in this case.
Yeah, so this is area where we will have to think a little bit and come back. Okay, those are good comments.
Maybe Jim, probably to ask you, are you seeing a particular hardware construct need to be there that is not available as part of the standards?
No, I just wanted to make it. I just want to make the group aware that this is a concern of hyperscalers in their operation and management of their systems.
Right. I think. Yeah. So I know that in like storage, in RAID, right? Again, it goes back to recovery, error recovery. So it falls under that bucket. But there is a way for it to kind of spare itself and recover from an issue and migrate. I guess those are the constructs that would use for migration. But I understand the point that is being made, which is those fall under the fault management and the fault tolerance kind of bucket.
I think what Nirav, for this white paper purpose, right? You can acknowledge live migration is part of the data center operations or fleet operations, but hardware, I believe existing hardware construct, software can marry on top of the existing hardware construct unless we find something new, right?
Yeah,
or no new hardware construct identifier, something like that, right?
Software should use the existing constructs from.
No, not use.
No.
Unless we identify something new required, we are, I believe, we are leaving up to the software implementation to handle it.
Something.
No, I think we need an interface. We need
Yeah.
an interface. We have the operational side that we explicitly choose not to cover, and we need an interface between the hardware availability and the operational side.
Define.
And
So
that would be bidirectional interface. For example, operations could tell us that this hardware is available, is free of payload, and thus we can do some things in hardware on that window that operations allow, for example. Right? This is part of the life cycle. So the operational readiness of hardware is maybe something that will be reflected on this side, but managed by the other side.
Yep.
And needs to be communicated.
Yeah, I think it's at a really purely hardware bonus, or is it a software construct on top of hardware? Because hardware can say, hold on, hardware can say I'm busy or I'm sleeping, software is not running, but does not mean the software can be migrated, right? There could be a software construct on top of hardware to figure out.
Yes, but there is some readiness concept here.
Yeah. So utilization.
Yeah.
The utilization section of this should handle like the availability of the hardware that can be used for migration. Is that
No,
what
not just a utilization, right? You could allocate and you could have a software sitting there, but not utilized, or simply they're sleeping or idle.
Yeah, so utilization
Right.
will be zero in that case.
No, if you're not utilized.
That's utilization. So that's operational utilization, 100%, and hardware capabilities utilization of near zero. Let's say you have a spare server for redundancy that is operationally allocated, but not carrying out load because it's a redundant machine.
It's a spare. Yeah.
Right? It's a spare. But otherwise, that doesn't mean you can power it off or do something because it's operationally allocated.
Correct.
So that's why we mean that there should be an interface to that operational side.
I see.
What I'm asking, Panos, is it a hardware construct or is it a software construct?
I would say that it's a
That's a
system
software.
construct. It's a system construct.
Right.
You're talking to a system, or I think we need an interface to a system to say, the system might it advertise its availability to us, but more importantly, if we know we want to take a system down and move the work from one system A to system B, we need an interface to say, system B, get ready, we're about to transfer some work to you, and then system A, transfer this piece of work to system B.
I think at least my understanding today, we don't even specify what OS or workloads are running. That is not right now in the fleet management. At least I have not seen any of the OCP or groups trying to address what is actually running there, right?
Yes, it certainly is not our duty to control what software runs there and how they're operationally allocated. However, we should be able to establish the link and follow something to the operational side if needed. That's my suggestion here.
So then I think even before going live migration, software scheduling, orchestration, is it part of the scope or not, right?
I think it's not.
So if that is not in scope, how are we going to even do a live migration if we don't know what is getting scheduled in the system?
So yes, a live migration would be a combined problem of the operational and the management side.
Right. So I think there should be a section clearly calling out yeah, software scheduling and deployment either out of scope or it's not covered as part of the scope, right? So need we have a separate paper if we really need to go through those details.
Well, the
I
thing is,
think
aren't we trying to? I thought what we were doing was we were providing an interfaces to systems as part of what we were doing, and so if we're doing that part, I mean, we might have an interface on top of the scheduler and below the scheduler. There might be an interface to say, hey, scheduler, some work needs to be moved. Find a machine and tell me when you want to do it. But then there might be a piece of what we're doing that's an interface between the bottom end of the scheduler and sending a message to these systems to direct them to start their line migration, their live migration procedures.
exactly. I think we should define these interfaces and think about these interfaces.
Okay. Okay. Let's. I mean, we don't have to make a decision today. What we can do is look at the interfaces, define the interfaces, and see how they look, and based on that, we can decide. Is that fair? Like spend
I
some
think
time
what
on
I'm
it.
saying is we should probably section on software installation or readiness or a deployment section. Underneath that, live migration can be a part of that section, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So software scheduling and is a. I guess we can create a.
Orchestration in general, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. In part of the orchestration. Okay.
Right.
Good. Good. Yeah. Okay.
So then you could expand on it, right?
And we include this in the orchestration section.
There's two orchestration, right?
And
There is a software
hardware.
scheduling orchestration and a hardware fleet management orchestration. That's two separate things, right?
Oh,
That
okay.
we tie them to.
In the software scheduling orchestration section and cover that there. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So we will, I think I'll work with Jim on this one and we can kind of figure out where it lands and then kind of write some blurb on it and then we can review it together. That will be the next steps. Is that okay? All right, perfect. Okay, I don't think this diagram illustrates data flow adds any useful understanding of how the cloud.
Just one more thing to that section itself, right?
No, okay.
Are we covering how the networks can configured or network related items? I know it's important for the.
Yeah, there is a configuration. Yeah, so as a part of procure and deploy, there is a configuration section, and I think what we covered there is that a lot of the specific configurations like storage configurations, power configurations, security configurations, firmware configurations, those are covered by specific groups within OCP. We just need to look at it from a system perspective, and I think the conclusion may be that once you configure specific components, then the system is configured. So we don't have to kind of go ahead. Is that what you were asking?
No, I think what I have systems.
Mhm.
I have a storage boxes, compute boxes, and network boxes, right?
Mhm.
How that configured and set up to access each other is certain scope. If it is, you need to have that additional details, how it need to be configured if you want to access it, right? Or is it out of scope and say like, hey, we are providing hardware, it's up to the orchestration layer above, really need to set up those things paths to that, right?
I'm fine with either ways. What does other people think on this one?
I think configuration is an integral part of deployment and operational. So I think it's part of the life cycle.
Okay. I think we do have configuration here. I think the question, maybe Sammy, what you're asking is, do we need to go beyond individual component configurations and have a system
do we
level?
Need to expand on the details, or we just leave
it? We just leave it to these individual OCP work groups to kind of figure out the individual component configuration, and we call it done, or should we have something more system level?
So let me give you an example that I'm seeing in a totally unrelated field or account. Is that we're trying to get a cluster configured with high performance NICs and a switch, and part of the configuration is things that can be done with Redfish because they involve sending messages to pieces of hardware and configuring them, and we have this whole DMTF framework on how to do that. But some of those things that have to be configured are things we tell the operating system. You know, how big how many TX or RX rings there are, or what the QoS policy should be. So in order to get that system, that cluster running well, we have to configure essentially pieces of hardware and pieces of the operating system. And there's all kinds of problems with that. As we've already heard on this call, there's different pieces, there's potentially different versions of the OS, different OSs, different versions of it. But you can't just talk to the hardware and say we're done configuring. You probably have to talk to the software as well.
Shouldn't the driver and the software take care of those?
No. So I can already think of some examples where the configuration is also application specific. So one example could be provisioning of NVMe namespaces with this size or that size, that you do a compromise between spare cells and like the wear out of the NVMe of the drive. That is like workload specific, how you want to tune it. Same goes with PCIe lanes, that you may need tune them for less or more error like recovery. And even more now in the GPU era, like with CXL components that you can share memory, or you can reconfigure buses. Pretty much you have lots of software defined components in the system that you need to establish this link between your payloads, your application, and your operational scheduler, and what the hardware is doing. And that part of the hardware may be statically configured in the Redfish through the BMC, could be something that you configure through the operating system, and you may need to reflect it through the IMA agent, or be fully in-band in the operating system, like several layers. But at the end of the day, since this affects your lifetime of components, say you have two NVMEs of the same manufacturing lot, but you use them in two very different environments, and as of such, their life cycle will be much different, and you want to be able to provision or do the statistics against that life cycle and against their usage profiles. So this is something where all these things blend in, and that's where we jump in and make sure we have interfaces between these stakeholders, let's say.
I think my question or thinking here is, do we want to have because it's a kind of boiling ocean, right? There are a lot of different things available, right? Maybe is it good to say like, yes, at a high level, we recognize this need to be configured, but there may be a white paper for each set of configs, right? Maybe system X versus Y, it may be totally different. It may produce different interfaces. They need to have some white paper, or somebody need to take a deep dive and really like figure out, hey, if I want to configure the system, this is how it need to be set up in order to meet certain workloads, right? because otherwise we will not able to get everything set up. We may not able to comprehend every single kind of what do you call configuration points, right? Maybe an example setup can be done by somebody and say like, hey, here is the thing. If you OCP system, if you want to put them together, this is how you need to set it up, right? Somebody need to work on it.
By the way, there is some work going on in this area.
I think so,
there's, there's something called Omnion, which is being pushed by Dell and others. And the goal there is configuration not only of hardware, but also of software, operating system things, as well as containers that you'd actually run applications in. And so we might find some inspiration looking at that work.
I think that's a good point, right? I think we can start with one finding to that, and if people are contributing more, then we can say, hey, go and refer here, right? Some examples are available here.
So the question, is that being pushed within the standards body, or is it being pushed by Dell?
I don't know that yet.
Okay.
I'm supposed to work on that too, but I haven't started.
Oh,
Is that Scott? Is that?
This is Jim.
Oh, Scott, do you know?
I'll fish around inside.
If there's something,
I'm actually in the hardware group,
about.
but I have dotted lines back to the various folks working on the cloud orchestration and large deployments.
Yeah,
So-
not to
Scott, you
put
work for Dell?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, I work for Broadcom.
Yeah, I think this is a
Go ahead.
good point, right? I mean, definitely network need to be set up, all the system storage, everything need to be set up to really functional, right? But I think unless there is some work to contribute and make it available, it's kind of hard to kind of say what is the generic mechanism to set it up, right?
Yeah, we need an OCP system to kind of make
Yeah.
that.
The other question is like, do you see that as a gap? Do you see that as something that the industry needs to deliver on? And like bring some examples of how we're lacking a system to implement this or that. Or for example, if we find ourselves that we are underutilizing the systems just because we cannot bridge the configuration, like the hardware tuning and the operational part, that's a gap that we could exploit and deliver some gains.
Okay, so I think what we're saying is this is a gap. Is a gap that we should call out in the paper. We should, right? And maybe it's a call to action to the industry to do something about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
to address it, right? I think that's a good point. If I have a system, how do we set it up, right?
Yeah. So it's a call to action, kind of a call out in the paper. Makes sense. Okay, so that's great. Thank you for those two things. Appreciate it. All right, so jumping on to the next comment from Jim. I agree. I think what you're saying is this is it's just a buzzword right now. But I think the intention here is to kind of dig deeper. So this diagram needs a little bit more work, as you can tell. I think the intention was to kind of show that data needs to be aggregated at multiple levels and kind of represented at multiple levels. The translation from one level to another can be vendor specific, but the representation has to be standardized. I think that is the goal of showing this in this diagram. It's not coming out, and I agree. I need to work on it a little bit. Is that fair? Is that something we should show out?
Yes.
Yeah. So let me make a comment here for myself, and if anybody is willing to help me with this one.
And we need to explicitly state that by data we mean telemetry data or configuration or system status data rather than the payload data.
Manageability data.
Yes. Yes, manageability data. We need to because by looking at that from a distance, I say, oh, what kind of data do we mean here? Do we mean user data?
There are layers of, okay, so there are layers of representation of manageability data. Manageability data. The translation of data from one level, from one layer to another, maybe vendor specific, but having a standard representation will help the industry as a whole, the ecosystem as a whole. Right. So that's that. I think that's what we want to come out. It needs to come out, and it's not coming out. I hear you. Okay. So.
Okay. So now we're now in the.
Okay. Go ahead.
We're now in the bulk of what I wrote. If you look, you see that little bracket with JJH in red.
Yes. Yes.
That's where I started, and then it goes for about a page or so, and then you'll see a /JJH where I stopped.
Yeah.
But what I was trying to communicate here, and I'm looking at the time. We got 12 minutes left, so we may not. I'll just say a couple of words about it, and then you may just want to think about it over the week. But what I was thinking about here, the big idea here is I see different dimensions of aggregation depending on what you want to do. And the one I think that we most commonly think about is the physical aggregation. And that's based on where things are. And I see that in the diagram above. If you scroll down a little bit, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see my cut at physical aggregation right there. You got the server and the component at the lower layers, but it can go up, a rack. In fact, in the diagram above, we see 4 of those. We see component, system, rack, and data center. And I guess what I've done is I've broken out that data center a bit to just show how those things are combined. But that's just one dimension. What's hot right now, especially with AI and machine learning, is building clusters. Scott, your company Dell is saying publicly that they want to sell clusters, or that customers are asking to buy clusters, not just servers. And the reason that people want clusters is they're going to tightly couple these servers together and run AI, generative AI, or machine learning kind of algorithms. So I think there's going to be interest, and maybe it's not the focus of this work group, but there's going to be people that want to aggregate computers along the lines of clusters for a computation. A third thing that I was looking at was it's very common, as you guys well know, with hyperscalers or cloud, that you have a company, an enterprise that goes to one of these hyperscaler cloud providers. And with hybrid clouds, you could have an enterprise having their own data center that's used for a lot of the baseline workload. But then when they want to burst, they go rent computational resources from a cloud provider. That's the point of this, the tenant aggregation. And then finally, there's virtual aggregation. We have, commonly both within cloud providers or within data centers that provide just for their own company. You have the virtualization of the illusion of owning a machine and being able to manage components within that virtual machine. So I was just trying to come up with a lot of areas where we have small things that get aggregated to larger things, and these different things may or may not be what the group wants to tackle with this particular white paper or with this particular effort that we're doing.
Yeah, it's a great point. So let's open it up and see if anybody has comments. I think Sammy has comments, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? I think instead of taking a view of only systems fleet, also we should take a view of how that's going to be used.
Use case, yeah.
Right, and what is that view going to look like, and what is that really entitled to from the hardware perspective, right? Fleet perspective.
Yep.
Giving that view also will be helpful. Good.
Yes. One thing more is if we don't have a flat model of usage of the systems, let's say, as you described in a cluster or confederation, or even more in a tenant situation, that we need to represent this slice of system to the tenant as if it was a separate data center, like virtualize the management of these systems to the point that the tenant can see them, can have, like, let's say, Redfish level discovery of the systems without ever affecting any other co-located systems, right? So how would we do that? If you need to, like, enumerate your leased systems as a tenant and be able to use them, but not conflict or leak into the next tenant, to your neighbor, whether like this would be possible with the current protocols and technologies.
Yeah, I think what also I'm kind of thinking is, do we want to put these use cases up front and say, like, I know we are designing our fleet is going to be managed, but there are multiple different type of fleets, right? That may result into how it's going to be orchestrated, how it's going to be managed.
I think we did mention some of that in the IMA presentation back in the summit, and we should at least like debate how much of this use
Should
case
be included. Yeah.
should be part of the protocol, part of the technology.
Right. So I think what we are saying is, okay, let's cluster is a use case, right? Now let's break it down and see what kind of aggregations does it need. Can that be covered by the rack scale aggregation, or does it need a separate layer of data model from a manageability perspective that doesn't exist in the rack scale one, right? So I think that's the question, and so somebody needs to dig into that, and I think maybe I can work with Jim, and what we can do is we can figure out, okay, this is what is there, this is how the data is supposed to be represented at a rack scale level. Is that really drag and drop into something that looks like a cluster, or there is some unique challenges with respect to the cluster that are not addressed? And so based on the answer to that question, we can come back and we can say yes.
I would make the claim that tying a cluster to a physical rack is just a short-sighted view, because customers are going to want the flexibility to find these clusters in different ways. I think the key thing about a cluster is not its physical proximity, but its latency across an Ethernet link. Whether my cluster is on, whether my peer node in a cluster is across the room or next to it, if I've got the same latency through the Ethernet switch, it doesn't matter.
I see.
And I think that's a weakness of using the word rack scale, right? Because it makes people force you to think about a rack, and rack scale architecture as defined what really did comprehend multiple racks.
But a rack is important when you're doing things like, I want to make sure I don't put too much weight in this square footage, or I need this much voltage wattage in my power drop.
Yeah, that's right. There's a physical instantiation of things, and there's a functional instantiation of things, right? I think the rack is a physical instantiation of things, and a cluster is a logical, functional collection of things.
Yep.
Yeah, and so maybe yes. And so
what I'm trying to say is that initially, like, do we want to put a different user view? I mean, in customer, or how are they going to use the systems, right? I could rent a VM, I can rent a system, or I could rent a rack, or you can even rent a dedicated one, or all these are different use cases, right? You have to do migrate, or how you do all kind of things. You need to play into that. In order to do that, the fleets need to able to capable of supporting it. Here is a hardware construct for that, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's what the debate is that we need to figure out if we want to kind of at what layer, what is our R and R roles
It's
and
bottoms up or tops down.
Correct.
I would dare to make a blunt statement here that our unit is no longer a server. Our system is no longer a single server, but we need to consider several components or several systems incorporated to the cluster or the overall system that we may be selling to a customer, maybe like hosting a tenant to that, and that's no longer a single server, but servers, multiple servers, including their network connectivity, their backbone bandwidth, anything that matters to the customer, to the end user that is going to put their operational load on that. And this should be reflected in the technologies we use to manage that. So if that has been too much, we can go back to the recording and we'll take a note of that.
Yeah. No, I think
Nice.
it's good to have that perspective so that it's we are kind of looking at a user perspective and the operational perspective both, right? And are we able to connect the dots?
But we're no longer selling single servers or using
I know.
them, in our case, right?
Right. Yeah, I think I ran out of time. This is a great discussion. Maybe we can have this again next week and continue on. So yeah, I see that, and it'll give me a little bit of chance to look through this. And is there anything else on the paper, Jim? That
No, that's it.
Okay. Yes, thank you for the comments, and thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, one more ask.
Let me just. I'm sorry, Norav. I made a couple of editorial changes where there was the wrong word that the speller didn't catch. Like I changed the word inventor to inventory, and from standards to standardize. I don't.
Perfect. Thank you.
I just want to tell you that.
Yeah. Go ahead, do that. Yeah. One more last word. Could we somehow prepare a teaser of what we are discussing here to communicate and invite more people into the conversation?
Like a one-pager, like an executive summary?
Something that we can put, like we can advertise, because I see ourselves as working on this paper for a bit of time. And I don't know if there is other members or people that would like to, engineers that would like to participate in this, because I feel that we're having a very good conversation here.
Did John leave already? I believe there is a monthly sync meeting for project leads. Probably John needs he probably knows what work. Probably it'll be good to kind of communicate there, and as part of the updates, if he can give a teaser to the whole OCP, that might be good too. Maybe I think good to kind of we create some wording and send it to him, right? And also we could probably post it in the wiki, this active work going on or something like that.
Yeah, if there's a template, then send it to me and I can work on it.
You don't need a template, just a 2 or 3 sentences of wording.
Oh, just 2 or 3 sentences. Okay, that's what I meant. Is kind of what is the limit of words and all that. Okay.
He's going to voice over, right? But in order for him to communicate, it will be good to write a few sentences.
Let me come up with like a 100-word paragraph, and I'll send that over. And if he needs to kind of reduce it, then he can do that.
Abstract. Yeah.
So let me ask a very leading aggressive question. There's a regional summit in Lisbon coming up, I understand. Is it even feasible that we would put together some kind of teaser that would spur some interest at this Lisbon meeting?
So the meeting is on April. I hope we will have this document by then. At all. Like if we have not had this document by then, I would see that as a problem, to be honest.
I think that's a challenge, Panos, because I think we need there's a lot of work to be done, and I need a lot more help. So it's doable. I'm not saying it's not
Yeah.
doable, but we
Yeah.
should get working on it every week then, and start working on.
Yeah, but we should have something by then, by April, to demonstrate to other to show to other teams.
Regardless of that, I believe we should submit an abstract, or we should submit a presentation. Generally, like
So
yes, I see some.
Talking about logistics, the deadline I think is next Thursday or next Friday. Do we have any chance of being confident that we can submit an abstract and put this document into the Lisbon meeting? Should we go for it, or
is it? I didn't really look. Is it abstract or is it a final one? I thought the OCP Global Summit abstract selection and final one. For this one, I'm not sure whether it's 2-page or one single page. We can look at it.
And maybe it's too aggressive to say, to make the commitment of putting in an abstract to say we're going to present our paper, but maybe there's some partial thing that we could present to at least talk about our goals and the progress we've made so far.
Yes. Okay, I think we need to take that offline and work. Yes, and decide.
Only. I think abstract
week.
only. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, but we need to decide even earlier than next Friday whether we are committed to present something to the
quick one before we. So, Panos, are you planning to go there?
I'll try to book my tickets. Yes.
Okay, then at least we want to make sure that people can travel, because we can submit, but at the end of the day, we are not able to travel. It's not good thing. So at least I think Nirav, Jim, I think thanks for bringing it up. Right, we should at least put an abstract in.
Yeah, I'll work with Jim and Scott, and we'll work on I'll schedule something, guys, for early next week, so we can come up with an abstract, and then I'll in the meantime I'll also start working on a kind of a 50-100 word thing, and then let's meet middle of next week, and we can drop you an email as to what we think.
You can give the same thing to John too for a.
Yeah, so we can use both. Yeah, we can do both. Kill two birds with one stone. Yes.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Y'all have a great day.